the first step in order to understand at least what you have in the cloud is to get that holistic visibility of which asset is there, whether it's unmanaged, whether it's being used by a certain tool like Terraform or Pulumi or CloudFormation, and only then decide what is really important for you in terms of alignment and whether you would like to invest in that alignment because it's investment.
This is DevOps Paradox, episode number 153. Eliminate cloud chaos with Firefly. Welcome to DevOps Paradox. This is a podcast about random stuff in which we, Darren and Victor, pretend we know what we're talking about. Most of the time, we mask our ignorance by putting the word DevOps everywhere we can and mix it with random buzzwords like Kubernetes, serverless, CI/CD, team productivity, islands of happiness, and other fancy expressions that make us sound like we know what we're doing. Occasionally, we invite guests who do know something, but we do not do that often since they might make us look incompetent. The truth is out there, and there is no way we are going to find it. P.S. It's Darren reading this text and feeling embarrassed that Victor made me do it. Here are your hosts, Darren Pope and Victor Farsick. We enjoy tools such as Terraform, Pulumi. Dare I say that we enjoy CloudFormation? I don't know. Let's not go there. But all of these tools do make our lives easier once we understand how to use them. Do you agree with that, Victor?
More or less. It's not that much about understanding how to use them, which you have to do, but defining everything you have, or you will have, right? And that's a laborious task. It depends on the size of the company. If you're a small company, it has 2 clusters, then it's one thing. If you're a big company, it has, like hundreds of clusters and servers and networking and this and that. It takes time until you define something, all of that. But once you do, then it's beautiful.
Well, and what about the situation to where you were an OG company that was before Terraform and CloudFormation and all the other tooling? And you have this big legacy mess, if you will. What do you do?
Change the company?
Oh, yeah. Okay, well, you would. But today we have a guest on. We have Eran on from Firefly. How are you doing today?
Amazing. Thank you for having me.
And what Firefly does is, now you can correct me if I'm wrong, and please do, is help deal with that legacy point and click stuff, even though you're also using Terraform or other type of tooling along. Is that correct?
Yes, it's exactly what we are doing. That and additional stuff that maybe I will share a bit later. But the main idea behind Firefly is to help DevOps engineer to make their entire cloud running with infrastructure as code. And as you just described, there is a lot of legacy stuff already in the cloud. And that combination between the modern way of running infrastructure and the legacy stuff is sometimes a bit of an headache for the cloud engineer to manage those in a single place.
Now, I just sort of jumped you right in there. Why don't you introduce yourself, tell us, what your role at Firefly is, and then let's get into it.
So I'm a co-founder and chief product officer at Firefly, and in my background, I'm doing the DevOps in the last 10 years. Before founding Firefly, I was the head of DevOps in Aqua Security. Before that, I was also managing a group of DevOps in Finastra. And I really like that infrastructure and lifecycle development. I think DevOps is a great approach of a modern way to manage cloud assets. And right now in Firefly, we are really focusing on infrastructure as code and how to make the life easier for the DevOps in order to increase its coverage.
How bad is the legacy problem that is not managed?
So, it's weird because we are talking in a terminology of legacy stuff, but, cloud is still something relatively new. We have cloud workloads in the past, 6, 7, 8 years. And there is a lot of organization that still did not start or did not complete the migration to the cloud, saying that it's a really a messy place to deal with, because all of those technology stacks and new approach of managing infrastructure is something that happened in the past couple of years. Let's say Terraform become very popular in the last 2 and 3 years, but stuff that was born in the cloud before that tend to be a big problem for the DevOps engineer. So it's really, let's say, it's really depend on the frequency of the deployment of your legacy application. So if it's something that you consider as, standstill or something that you don't need to continue supporting, so unmanaged assets can be something that doesn't cause you a trouble. But in case you need to still support that kind of application and make sure it's resilient and you have the way to provision those workloads in a different place, then the operation of taking existing resource and make infrastructure as code out of it can be a real pain.
I take even more radical approach. I would say that even static assets are a problem, because sooner or later, AZ, if you're running it in AWS, AZ is going to go down. And then it's going to come back up and you're going to wonder, what do I do now? Where is Joe, who did it 3 years ago? And is he still even working for us type of problem, right? So it might be less of a problem, but it's still problem in waiting, right?
Yeah, I think one of the problem is those unmanaged assets, as we are consider them in Firefly. In most of the case, because a lot of cloud engineers tend to move from organization to organization, the one that is now in charge of a certain AWS account or multiple account doesn't even realize what is in the cloud. So even before that issue of how to deal with some downtime or the need for reprovisioning, even the fact that there is something out there is very hard to understand right now.
Oh yeah, especially also when it comes to cost. Hey, we are paying 100,000 a month for the stuff we do not know what they are, where they are. Why do we have them, right? It's just there.
When you have something on some region that you didn't even realize that is enabled on your AWS account.
Exactly. And there is nothing you can do, because if you don't know what it is, how do you know whether you can shut it down? I know that what you're describing is happening all the time, and I'm still confused how can companies allow themselves to get there, right? Because we are not really talking about something that exists for only a couple of years. You mentioned Terraform becoming popular last 5-6 years, whatever the time you said. But we had Ansible before that. We had CF Engine before that. And even before all those things, we knew how to write shell scripts. And it's been quite a lot of time. I mean, yeah, I think that it was clear that we cannot do stuff like that long before even cloud appeared, right? And yet everybody's still doing it. I mean, not everybody, but many.
Yes, but it's really, I think, as I see it, and what we were able to notice on our customer is that the first step to the cloud in most of the case was not per the standards that we are now working with. So if a company would like to migrate workloads into a modern cloud infrastructure, they will start with those, shell script that is wrapping an AWS CLI command, and maybe doing some Ansible for post configuration. But when the years evolve, people become expert on other tooling, and those become neglected, and therefore you would like to be aligned with the way that you are right now running in the cloud. So it's very popular to see stuff that was deployed in the cloud in a way that now you consider as a legacy approach or as a bad practice.
So then what should they do? I'm guessing start writing manifests from scratch, convert Ansible to Terraform, inspect the existing resources and create specs from them. Something else?
So I think the first step is to get better visibility. even before, doing some deployment migration or moving from a certain language to a certain language that is now popular. But by the way, even with that space, if I can add at this point, even in that space of infrastructure as code, there is a various of tooling. We see right now some companies that were using Terraform now migrating to Pulumi, right? And I guess next year we will have another kid on that block, and people will migrate Pulumi to that new kind of way. I don't see it like end. The way to provision stuff in the cloud will keep involved. The tool will become more mature. But the first step in order to understand at least what you have in the cloud is to get that holistic visibility of which asset is there, whether is unmanaged, whether is being used by a certain tool like Terraform or Pulumi or CloudFormation for those guys that are using CloudFormation, and only then decide what is really important for you in terms of alignment and whether you would like to invest in that alignment, because it's investment.
Oh yeah. So theoretically, I'm curious, you're not putting CloudFormation into legacy stuff yet.
I have I have a personal opinion about CloudFormation. I can say that CDK become more popular as a wrapper for CloudFormation. But if you ask me what will be my tool of choice when we talk in infrastructure as code, it will be a Terraform. But again, this is because my personal experience with managing infrastructure, I chose Terraform. But I can see great value both on Pulumi and CDK. CloudFormation as a template language, I can tell you that from my experience, is not my first choice, let's say like that, without insulting anyone in AWS, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they're not insulted because they wouldn't be doing CDK, and then if they are. What you're suggesting is to, if I understood right, to catalog the existing resources, the current state in AWS or somewhere else, and convert it into manifests of a tool of choice, right?
Yes. And also, Victor, one point to understand, even, we are just now talking about legacy stuff. Let's say those legacy stuff was created by the one that was managing the cloud before me, right? The one that is now working on a new company, and I'm the new DevOps engineer. And I have some legacy stuff that was created by shell script and Ansible and whatsoever. In addition to that, what we see is even when somebody would like to use Terraform, is using it only on a specific kind of workloads. For example, those EC2, those EKS, stuff that is more related to the actual application. But there is a lot of resources that we still not think to manage with infrastructure as code as a default. And I can give you a few examples, like IAM users. So we saw some customers that managing IAM users with infrastructure as code, but the majority that is leveraging infrastructure as code did not get to a point where the entire IAM users are codified, let's say. Another example is like the DNS records, the Route 53 records. In most of the case, people are not managing them in infrastructure as code. And this is something that I think organization will going to be more mature regarding other resources as well. Not just those, EC2s and EKS and all the stuff that we are, the default is now to use Terraform.
For example, IAM users, do you think that they're not managing them through whichever tool because they do not want to do it through that tool, or because that's the first thing that they started and they did not understand how to do it with a tool? Or is it lack of knowledge or not wanting to? Because I imagine that much of those users were created after the company started using Terraform or whatever.
Right. I think what's happening is that DevOps engineers tend to codify resources that they would like to, reproduce and maybe provisioning more frequently. But those assets that you consider like as a one-time activities, like IAM, like a record of a DNS, it's like more easier to do that on a ClickOps kind of approach rather than manage them in infrastructure as code. But again, as I see it on my perspective and from what I learned in the past, let's say 2 years, is it's better to have your entire workload, not just those, compute kind of instances codified. Specifically, if you are talking about Route 53, the stigma, like most of the downtime in the world are caused by DNS kind of issues, right? So for that specific example, I will highly recommend to have those codified and not through manually in the Route 53 console.
True. But that means that, if it's for some person easier to create a user directly through AWS console, then converting those existing users into infrastructure as code of any kind would still not help. We still need to have the phase of convincing that person first that that's not true. It is not easier, right? Because, if you have 1,000 users directly created, you convert those 1,000 users to Terraform something, 1,001st user will still be created through console unless that person sees the light or is re-educated or convinced that that's not the right thing to do anymore, right? So the real question is it really easier, or that's a perception that it's easier? Because if it's not really easier, then we're probably not going to get far with infrastructure as code, right?
Right. Again, I'm not saying that create a code of something that it's taking few clicks to do, it's easier. I'm saying it's the right approach. And again, to get a user done in AWS, like an IAM user, it can take, 10 minutes with the AWS console wizard. It's really like click, put in the email, and that's it. You have the user ready with that policy attached to it. And from scratch, creating that, let's say, Terraform block with all of the stuff that you want there will take you more. But I think this is like a term of investment, because once you have that model of creating that IAM user, the first time will take you time. Again, even if you are not using Firefly, if you're using only the documentation that you have and the Terraform registry and getting a module from there, it will take more time. It will take maybe, double, triple, 1 hour. But then the next user will be much easier to provision.
I want to go back to something that you said a few moments ago, and I want to make sure I heard it correctly, is that you're seeing people moving from Terraform to Pulumi. Did I misunderstand that?
No, it's exactly what I said.
Why do you see that happening? Or why do you think that is happening now?
Before he answers the question, and I really want to hear the answer, you can also think of it differently and say, how many users would pick Pulumi as the first tool of choice? And my bet is not many. So they're coming from somewhere. Now the question is only whether they're coming from Terraform or Ansible. Sorry, interrupted you, Eran. Go ahead, answer.
I don't know what is those guys that, try and have some, let's say, legacy stuff in the cloud and they just want to start with infrastructure as code, why they will choose Pulumi. But I can understand those base of cloud engineers that have experience with infrastructure as code and get to the point where Terraform is not enough for them in terms of the flexibility that they would like to do in those some of complex use case, then they need something more like a development language. And Pulumi offer the option to choose, between Golang and TypeScript and C#. And I can see some good reasons to do that. I don't think it's easier than using the ACL. And of course, in terms of community and examples and stuff out there in the web, Terraform is much more mature and much more easier for the new guy that would like to leverage in infrastructure as code. But I can definitely see reasons why people will choose Pulumi. I think it's like more advanced kind of approach and in more complex kind of situation. And Pulumi Cloud, as I see it, is a great product. I had some hands-on about it in the recent few weeks. Again, this is why also AWS choose to double down their investment on CDK. That freedom of creating a code that is, completely for you on that language that you are used to and have those that expert and experience, it does make sense in some of the cases.
And I believe sort of along that same line, you were saying that people moving from Terraform to Pulumi, but then you said there's a third one coming. What is that third one?
Again, the technologies are always coming up, right? Victor, familiar with Crossplane? We discussed it a few weeks ago. Crossplane, from anyone that doesn't know, is a modern way to manage infrastructure using Kubernetes API. So Crossplane is coming in, 1 year. There is another one. And what I'm just saying is those, let's say, cloud compilers, the way to provision stuff in the cloud will keep evolving. So it's really about what is the best fit for a certain group of cloud engineers that working on a specific company. But saying that, I think eventually we will see blend of tools and groups within an enterprise company will choose what is the best fit for them. So we will see like on, let's say, acme.com, we will see people using Terraform, we will see people using Pulumi and also using Crossplane in the same organization. By the way, we already see that.
In the same accounts?
Yes.
Using the same tool? That seems like a disaster.
From management perspective, if you don't have the proper visibility, yes, I don't know if you consider that a disaster, but it's a chaotic kind of situation. But I think those, platform teams that enabling those silos of each development organization can choose the tool that is suitable for them. This is a very good approach eventually. Again, if you have that kind of proper mutual gating that help you to governance your cloud and make sure nothing that doesn't support to be there will not be provisioned, the tool can be just the choice of a certain development group or a certain, DevOps kind of group within organization. I don't think you can expect from a large scale organization with, hundreds or thousands of developers to use just Terraform because somebody decide that Terraform, this is the tool of choice. And again, I don't have anything against Terraform. I like Terraform. I'm just giving an example. So we will see people using Crossplane alongside with other groups that using Pulumi, and maybe the majority will be Terraform. But those blends of tooling, we already see right now. And I think it's going to be even much messier in the next years.
So what I'm hearing is you may have a central team that is managing all the networking, border load balancers, those kinds of things under one set of groups or one tool, let's say Terraform. And then they've handed off a specific account with all its guardrails and stuff in place. And then that team can say, okay, here's my account and I can use whatever tool I want because I'm responsible for the state of my fenced in yard. Is that what you're saying? So basically we have the one big fence that one group has done. And then they're allocating that to other people and they can do with it whatever they want from that point because they don't care about the state of those little fences.
Yes, it totally makes sense to me that large-scale cloud will be look like that. As long as those owners will not give the option to create unmanaged assets. And when I say, again, unmanaged assets is an asset that doesn't have infrastructure as code, then the tool itself will be the decision of a certain head of a certain group. It's not like any developers can choose, what to do, but if there is plenty of development group, it does make sense that one will use Pulumi and other will use Terraform, and the networking team will use CDK, for example.
There is also the question of not touching the legacy, right? In some cases, as you explained, Eran, one team might prefer for certain types of infrastructure services one tool, and another team might prefer another. But there is also a situation where you do want to move from tool X to tool Y, let's say from CF Engine, I'm showing how old I am, to Ansible, and you are not likely to rewrite everything from CF Engine to Ansible, but just to pick up new stuff to be Ansible. And then 3 years later, you say, no, I want Terraform. What do? You create new stuff in Terraform, but leave the existing stuff in Ansible, right? For the same reasons why we have mainframe today. People switched from mainframe to Java, Python, Node, whatever the programming language is. But that still does not change the fact that nobody wants to change the things that were written years ago, right? So they just pick up Java for something new, for a new application.
I think, that new position in an organization, the head of DevOps, or, right now it's become even more, let's say, influencer in terms of his position in an organization. So right now we can see a VP of DevOps and directors. And one of the reasons is that the typical DevOps engineer that now have some project to put some infrastructure in the cloud is not tend to be in the same organization more than 1.5, 2 years, right? And the responsibility of that director, senior manager, let's say, is to make sure that the stuff that is being put in the cloud right now will be, highly documented with the best practice and stuff that will not be considered as legacy only 2 years after that workload was introduced. And again, I'm not saying that if right now you starting like a greenfield kind of project, you are choosing Terraform, I'm not sure if it will be considered as the best practice in 5 years from now, right? So you might need to do that migration. As long as you have something very good in the beginning, it will be easier for you to maintain it moving on. What to do about the legacy? Again, for Firefly perspective, you need to make sure to convert them to infrastructure as code. But if you are trying to do that, without any help from a third party, it's really challenging. And again, this is one of the pains that Firefly tried to solve, is to make that transition to infrastructure as code more easier and more easy to digest in terms of, product management perspective. So people will understand that eventually this is in order to eliminate the risk for the next disaster. Because if you don't have the option to redeploy that infrastructure in a very easy and a very fast way, you might have that legacy application very problematic for you.
Let me ask one last question. In your opinion, ignoring having a break glass at the organizational level for 2 or 3 people, should all point and click, create, update, and delete be fully disabled within an organization?
Again, if you have the option to monitor those manual changes, then you should allow them. Because, and again, let me know if I got your question right. If you have some incident in 2 a.m. and the SRE that is on call need to fix something, and it's a time urgent kind of activity, and it's easier for him to go and log in to the AWS console and change that parameter that need to be changed in order to keep the service running again, then it's okay. but you need to make sure that you have that kind of monitoring in place to eventually align the infrastructure as code with the new configuration.
Right, and that scenario is the break glass. But hopefully, I would never even get to that point because yes, there's always got to be at least a break glass for somebody to use. But as a whole, if people are wanting new assets, they should not be in 2022 pointing and clicking to create those. Those should be coming in through Terraform, Pulumi, Crossplane, you name it, somewhere else, not just point and click.
Definitely. Only if you have the way, to create those new resources, let's say manually with point and click, but then convert them to infrastructure as code immediately. But as a practice, nothing, a change or a new resource supposed to be introduced to the cloud in a manual way. Not right now, not in 2022.
Now, if there was only a tool that could auto reverse, oh wait, there is one. That's what you do, right? That is what Firefly does. As part of what Firefly does. Now, at the time of recording, Firefly is in early access mode. So if people wanted to try out, they're going to have to talk to somebody. Well, not necessarily talk to somebody, but fill out a form, do the things, correct?
Right, but good news, we are going to announce our GA next month. And one of the stuff that it's going to allow user to self-service experience with Firefly without talking with anyone. So this is a very exciting milestone for the company. And again, I highly recommend to try it out.
So probably by the time you're listening to this, because this episode is releasing on April 6th, it sounds like it's already going to be GA, or at least that's the current plan at the time of recording. Well, Eran, thanks for joining us today. All of Eran's contact information down in the show notes. And if Firefly sounds like something that could help you out, then go check it out. Thanks, Eran, for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
We hope this episode was helpful to you. If you want to discuss it or ask a question, please reach out to us. Our contact information and a link to the Slack workspace are at devopsparadox.com/contact. If you subscribe through Apple Podcast, be sure to leave us a review there. That helps other people discover this podcast. Go sign up right now at devopsparadox.com to receive an email whenever we drop the latest episode. Thank you for listening to DevOps Paradox.